Alexander for the lead. Blocked. Durant's tries to call a timeout, which they have none. And now the Thunder bench is pointing out that he signaled for the timeout without.
You have to apply the rules even when it's inconvenient to do so. Here we have a great opening game to the season. It's coming down to the wire, likely headed into double overtime, except Kevin Durant calls a timeout that Houston does not have. And so if this timeout is granted, then the OKC Thunder get a free throw. They also get possession of the ball. And if they hit that free throw, that very likely ends the game. But that is not how this plays out because the referees elected to not grant this timeout. And what I want to do now is show the play in question where the referees are looking right at Kevin Durant. So here we have Kevin Durant coming down with the ball. We have Zach Zarba looking right at him. And then we have another referee who's about 9 feet away from the 3-point line towards half court. He's also looking right at Kevin Durant, and neither of them see Kevin Durant make the call, according to them. So let's look at an SI article. Here we have a quote from Shea. Kevin definitely called timeout about 3 times, verbally and physically. The refs just missed it. That's life. So that's life part of this. I want to focus in on this because this will get glossed over. This was the Oklahoma City Thunder still won, and it went into double overtime. It ended up not affecting the outcome, but this needs to be focused in on because this is yet another example where the NBA loses integrity because here we have a call that is not made because it's an anticlimactic call. It's not the call that leads to a more entertaining ending. It's a call that ends with the Oklahoma City Thunder shooting a technical free throw, very likely winning the game, and it's over. And we have the referee not wanting to make that call. And then we have another paragraph here. And as for the ref's response, crew chief Zach Zarba said that, quote, none of the 3 game officials saw Kevin signal that timeout. That's why a technical wasn't granted before the expiration of time. So credibility is lost here because we can see very clearly from the film we have 2 referees looking right at Kevin Durant, and why wouldn't they be? He's coming down with the ball just as the game's about to end, so they're going to look to him, and they both are. And let's go ahead and turn off the volume, and we're going to go ahead and play this at 0.5 speed because I want to see the referee's reaction to Kevin Durant calling the timeout. So they're looking right at him. He's indicating timeout, and we can see here both referees looking right at him. Kevin Durant's calling the timeout. Then Alpi Shangun realizes that Kevin's calling timeout, and they don't have one, so he gets him to stop. Again, the referees are looking at Kevin Durant, but they are walking away, and this game is headed into double overtime. So here we can see Zach Zarba walking away, the other referee near half court also leaning away, and that's what happens. And then the final buzzer sounds and Zach Zarba is off. So you can't say that you missed that call. We can see that you were looking right at Kevin Durant. This is problematic, right? Here you're actually on film, right? On film, we can see that you are not making the call that is there to be had. And that's what the referees need to do. Just call what's there, not what you want it to be, not what is more entertaining, not what favors the star player, not what favors the favored team, but what actually is there. So here we have the NBA on opening night. There again, the integrity just like it's at an all-time low because we see this unfolding. This is right after or amidst the Clippers scandal, which we're going to get to right now, because we have an update, a smaller update, but an update nonetheless. And this is from, we're going to look at Pablo Torre's feed because we have a Wall Street Journal article the Wall Street Journal published an article on the Aspiration Clippers scandal. And I don't have access to the Wall Street Journal, but what we do have is this Pablo Torre retweet. So the original tweet writes, it is kind of insane. This article doesn't mention Pablo Torre until like 80% of the way down. So let's focus on that first. If that is true, and by the way, that's from Ryan Glass-Steagall of Front Office Sports. This is Pablo's story. He's taken all of the risk. He's covered this, Even if you're adding on to the story, even if you have something new, in every additional article, you must cite to the source, who is Pablo. Pablo broke this story. Again, there's so much risk assumed by Pablo in publishing this story and covering it the way he's covering it. You have to give him credit, and you can't bury that in a story. So first, let's start with that. Second, let's start off with the screenshot. The subheading here is unusual deal. This is from the WSJ article. In December 2021, Sandberg told a high-ranking aspiration executive that the Clippers had approached him about doing a deal with Leonard, their injured star. The executive recalled Sandberg saying, "This is important to the Clippers." And then Pablo Torre adds to this, but the most insane thing about this new Wall Street Journal story on aspiration is that this massive scoop that I've been circling, which directly contradicts what Steve Ballmer told ESPN, is buried like halfway through. So yes, here we have one thing that's interesting is, what does circling mean from Pablo? I haven't heard Pablo say anything to this effect. So what does circling mean? And that leads to another question we'll get to in a moment. But here we have a direct contradiction, and this is being reported by the Wall Street Journal. Not that it needs to be reported by a mainstream publication to be true, but now this is going to be even more difficult because it's no longer quote unquote podcaster Pablo Torre. This is the Wall Street Journal, and it's not podcaster Wall Street Journal. This is the Wall Street Journal reporting this. So now what? Now are you going to undermine what the Wall Street Journal is reporting? And so this is stating that the Clippers, that this is important to the Clippers, and that the Clippers approached aspiration about the deal with Leonard, and it wasn't as Steve Ballmer said, is that they made the introduction and then they were off to the races on their own. So this is very significant, and let's actually go back to Pablo Torre's feed because I think there is one more tweet I want to look at. Um, so so Pablo Torre adds, they never mentioned Uncle Dennis or Mitch Frankel at all. Never mentioned that Kawhi finally got paid 9 days after Dennis Wong invested $2 million. Never mentioned that Dennis Wong never invested in aspiration before, and so on. So when I read through this, they may not have added these different facts here because they didn't want to cite to Pablo, which is just strange. Like, it's obviously Pablo's story. You have to give him credit for this. He broke it. He's done all of the hard work, and for Wall Street Journal not to push his citation down is wrong. But then also, if you're covering this article, and you're not going to include this, I don't know. Was this a summary article? Who knows? But the most important takeaway here is that we have this Joe Sandberg telling a high-ranking executive that the Clippers approached him about doing a deal with Kawhi Leonard, and the quote, "This is important to the Clippers." So I actually looked at Mark Cuban's Twitter, and I don't see any response to this. So maybe only when it's podcaster Pablo Torre does Mark Cuban have a reply. But here we can see there's nothing. I can't find anything from Mark Cuban on this Wall Street Journal report. So let's go to the big board now. We've covered Kevin Durant. We've covered the Wall Street Journal article. And now we get to who is on the right side of history. So I had here Sports Illustrated and Yahoo on the right side of this, right side of history when it comes to the Clippers scandal coverage. But then I had to add in somewhat. The reason I had to add in somewhat is because when I started to look and see their most recent post coverage of the story, there really wasn't. It was very difficult to find anything from them, and so when I looked at their website, when I looked at YouTube, I just wasn't coming across anything. And so let's now go to YouTube. I searched for Clippers scandal, and I think I have the filter set to this week. Yes. So we have here we have the Basketball Bulletin, and what I found out was the Basketball Bulletin is connected to LakersNation.com. So he is covering this story. We have another from the Basketball Bulletin. We have Gilbert Arenas appearing on Vlad TV. And so this was interesting, why the NBA will do nothing about Kawhi Leonard's no-show contract. But as far as coverage, we have some independent YouTube channels. front office sports. Not that this looks like it might touch on it, but the title's not here. But again, my point here is just as we're scrolling through this, we come across my video from 6 days ago. This just isn't being covered. And so this leads to my next point. Is it time for Pablo to publish the rest? And what is he withholding? So I would guess that Pablo, if he does have anything left that's substantial, that is going to come out tomorrow because tomorrow would be the perfect day to do it. So I know tonight was NBA opening night, but tomorrow is when we have the full slate of games and the attention will be on the NBA. And so if he has his 5 a.m. release on this last maybe this last slew of evidence from Pablo, I think this would be the right time to publish. But at this point, I think if he is holding on to more, then it's time to publish because as we've seen, there might be other reporters come or other media outlets that start to cover this to hone in on the coverage. But also, it's going to be difficult to drag this out for months. So that's what's interesting here. Pablo Torre always talks about, well, he's still investigating, it's ongoing. That is great in that he always has the option to add more, but does he have more at this point? How much more does he have? So that's the interesting part of this. But here we come back to this tweet or this retweet from Pablo where he says, I've been circling. I'm interested what that means. So the most insane thing about this new WSJ story on aspiration is that this massive scoop that I've been circling. What does circling mean? Does that mean you're going to come back to it? I just don't remember Pablo ever talking about this. So maybe it's something he's been looking at. I don't know. Pablo always keeps what he knows unknown to everyone else, which has worked out great to his advantage. But I think if he's going to have a significant drop, I think tomorrow is the best day to do it because otherwise he could have, if he does have any more significant notes, then it's very possible that other we see other media outlets start to bring those forward. So let's go back to the big board. So I have here the story has been pushed way down, not even a lingering distraction. So this really hasn't been something that's loomed over the NBA's opening night. This has gone away. The media with no media coverage, we don't see this story lasting. And part of this is I don't think the other media outlets are as interested in it because it's not as much of a story because there isn't other the major media outlets aren't covering this. We only see the independents. So we've seen, speaking on about the right side of history, we've seen Jim Rome cover this. We've seen Jason Whitlock cover this, but of course they are independent. They're independents. They're not. They wouldn't. I wouldn't consider them the mainstream media. Although they are known figures, they're not the mainstream media. Now, of course, the New York Times has covered this, but the New York Times is associated with Pablo. They're associated with the Athletic. We've seen Dan Le Batard cover this. But as far as mainstream media outlets, we've seen them stay away from this. I have heard Bill Simmons throw in a few jokes about aspiration and the Clippers, but other than that, we haven't seen the coverage. We've seen this really just dissipate, and the media not covering this. I have a video on the media not covering this several weeks ago, but the story has hit a lull. And it's up to Pablo now to keep this story going. We saw Wall Street Journal there was a bump with the Wall Street Journal, so some more buzz around this. But if there's something that Pablo has left, I think he needs to publish that rather than hold it back if there is anything that he is holding back. Let's continue on with opening night apathy. So I wasn't that interested in tonight's doubleheader. I ended up watching the second quarter of the Warriors and the Lakers game, and it was as boring as I thought it would be. And let's focus in on that first. I know LeBron was out, so it would definitely have added to the game if LeBron was there. But the NBA is still pushing LeBron and Steph Curry, and I think they should I think they should be looking to promote their younger stars, the teams that are more up and coming, the teams that are newer, less known to the national audience. that's where I'd be looking if I was the NBA. Maybe LeBron and Steph Curry still works. I don't know if that's the case. But LeBron is 40 and he's turning, I think, 41 in December. Steph Curry, obviously, at the end of his career. We've seen the Warriors so many times. Did we really need to see them again? And they're playing the Lakers. And I know the NBA loves to promote the Lakers, but this is going to be a bad team. Even with prime Luca, there's just not a lot there. And when LeBron comes back, it's still going to be, I mean, maybe 500, maybe a 550 team, but there's just not a lot here. So I wasn't interested. The game played out like I thought it would. It was just the NBA, the Warriors kept the Warriors kept the Lakers at a distance, and they just ended up pulling away. So I think the NBA should be looking for Cooper Flag, uh, Victor Wembanyama, other stars to start bringing them up. Other up and coming teams. So a team that I'm interested in is the Detroit Pistons. So other teams that just are in the mix. And I'm not saying the Pistons should have been there on opening night. My point is to start to bring in fresh players and fresh teams and make them the feature, make them the marquee. We've seen LeBron, we've seen Steph Curry. The Warriors are going to likely be a good to very good team, but they're not a contender. And the Lakers are going to be a bad team. So there's not that much here. Maybe it's just the draw. The draw is so much for the casual fans, but I think the NBA also needs to start looking not for just the short term, but it's time to move on. Still have them in the rotation, but this was a feature game tonight, and we saw the Warriors and the Lakers yet again. It just wasn't that interesting to me. Now, I think the Thunder and the Rockets are definitely a more interesting matchup, and the Rockets being one of those up and coming teams that I was talking about. So I'm interested in the Rockets and how they come up with Kevin Durant and whether he can take them up a few levels. Uh, but with OKC, OKC is boring to me, and part of the reason they're boring is just because they're so good, and part of it is that I expect them to just really wear down the other team and come away with the victory. But the other part that I really don't like about watching the Oklahoma City Thunder is watching Shea draw fouls. The NBA, when they had the change in the rules where they started refereeing the games differently and they weren't calling fouls anymore, I thought that was very refreshing and a nice change, and I hope they continue forward with that this season. But I don't like to see a guy like I just watched the game tonight fresh, and I only caught the end of it. By the way, I only caught starting in the fourth quarter with 16 seconds left to go. This was a game I could have missed and I would have had no problem with it. But it just so happened that when I turned on the game, there was 16 seconds left in the fourth quarter. It was tied. I watched both of the overtimes, and it ended up turning out to be a really good game on opening night. And I looked at the line too. That's another thing I do with the games. I look at the line to see if I need to pay closer attention. So if the line is closer, then I'm more likely to check in sooner. If it's further away, I'm more mentally check out then because I think that it's probably not going to be as close. Of course, this is opening night lines, so they could easily be off. But the point is that I thought that Thunder were the superior team. Although I think this is an interesting matchup, the Thunder are a team I don't really watch because one, I think they're usually so much superior to the other team, but then also because we have Shea Gilgis Alexander drawing fouls, and that's one of the ways that he's going to come about his points. So I do think Chet is an interesting player. So he's another one of those players I'd like to see more and more. But and I didn't catch a lot of what the game was tonight with him, but I thought this was a fine opening night game. It just wasn't something where I was personally interested in it. But I did think this was a decent game, and it did turn out to be a good game. So that was, I think, a good choice by the NBA. But there we have opening night apathy. And last, we have Roundball Rock making a return. The NBA is back on NBC. In the 90s, I did not realize that we were at peak NBA. It was 10 of 10 for the way they set up the games. And now, seeing how we've seen other coverage with ABC and ESPN, the NBC really had this exactly right. And so the more elements they can bring from the 90s, the better off the presentation is going to be. And the more festive and the better mood they're going to set for these games. Round Ball Rock, they should never go away from this theme. It just sets everything up so perfectly. So it was good to see the NBA back on NBC. And we'll go ahead and leave this podcast here. If there are any updates, I'll include those in the description. I'll also include links to the SI article as well as Pablo Torre's Twitter feed.